This is the Left of the Forgotten Borough podcast on a snowy day special episode, although the circumstances that we're here to talk about are not so pleasant. But I'm Andrew Savage.
And I'm Nancy Richards, and it is snowing out.
It is coming down out there, and I'm sort of the feeling that I have, I don't know about you, Nancy, is given the events of the last day or so, it kind of reminds me of George Floyd when we were all locked in our houses during the pandemic and we saw what happened. And when it came to George Floyd, and we were all kind of buried in our houses. I'm kind of getting the same vibe here, although obviously with the snow.
I can see what you're saying in regards to that. You're kind of indoors and really shouldn't be going anywhere right now, but people want to be out. Like I know, like it was difficult. There's supposedly a protest today in Brooklyn for Schumer, and how you get into Brooklyn today,
Yeah.
So it's difficult. I get what you're saying. So. I'm I couldn't stop watching the video yesterday. I couldn't stop watching the video. In fact, when I first saw the video, I was confused
Well, this is,
because
yeah, just to, put it into context for our listeners, unless you've been living under a rock, we're talking about the ICE murder or Border Patrol, whatever they are. They're all Nazis at this point. So, of Alex Preddy. So, yes.
right. So first of all, they said the thing said he was a 51 and but then someone mentioned like this is when it was first announced and someone had posted it something and I was confused. I'm like, where's the murder? I or where's the confrontation? I see a guy with a phone like filming and he's far away from the ICE people. So I didn't quite understand like what are they doing? Like um and then as more news came in and like that is the guy who got murdered and then I kept watching it and I'm going, what did he do? Like he had a phone. He was um he- and it appears that they went to go push the woman that was standing next to him.
A pregnant
For
woman, from what I understand.
Oh, really? I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
Um and they pushed her down and then, they sprayed um whatever that stuff is in their her face and then they sprayed and he had one hand up and then he had one hand on his phone and then when he went to go help that woman they sprayed him as well and then it just got chaotic and that was all like in 20 seconds and he was dead.
And they shot him, what, 8 times?
I think it said 9.
That's what I counted when I saw one of the videos. And my reaction to it was what I am, obviously this is a horrible tragedy. This was a human rights violation. This was a crisis. And uh, what I notice is that there are so many angles to it. I've seen at least, I don't know, 5 or 6 different angles, and none of which hold up the administration's lies about what happened here. I've heard that he's went there brandishing a gun and wanting to kill people. None of that holds up whenever you see the videos. None of that happens when you actually look and see what happens. And they're just trying to gaslight people. And, they're counting on the tribal. Yeah, they're counting on the tribal loyalty and frankly the stupidity of their voters and their
Well,
supporters to
well,
carry them through this.
I watched Face the Nation this morning and they had the chief of police of Minneapolis on. I don't know, did you see that?
No, the only show I watched this morning was Meet the Press.
Oh, okay. So I watched Face the Nation and they had him on. And I also watched his press conference yesterday as well with the mayor. Um, and he was saying that, first of all, they're not sharing information with them. So when they were asking him questions, he was like, well, first of all, I don't have information because they're not giving information. So he's just simply going off of videos like you and I are seeing and making and and he's a police, he's the chief of police. He can't speculate so much like we can, in essence. But even when Margaret Brennan was asking him about, is there any evidence from what you know that he was brandishing a gun? And he's like, well, first of all, I don't have any information in regards to the fact that he was brandishing a gun. And by me just personally looking at the videos from the many angles, He said, I don't see him
No,
brandishing a gun. Yes, he was carrying a gun legally, that we know. And he said, but I don't see anything where he's brandishing a gun or so it's a blatant lie. It's a blatant lie. And I've also watched somehow they're spinning it. They're blaming Minnesota, like the whole overall, that they wouldn't have to do this if agitators weren't in the streets. They wouldn't have to do this if the mayor didn't incite this. And I've been listening to the mayor's press conferences, and everything is that I've been listening to is logical, and they stressing peaceful. You have a First Amendment right. You need to not, impede, but you have a right to be there. You have a right to film. You have a right to film. And that man was standing back filming them, And why did they come over and feel like they needed to push that woman and then, and then go after him?
because they're a bunch of goons who act with impunity, who have unlimited funding, and who have an administration and a right-wing propaganda network who will support them. Although I will say, I will give credit where credit is due to Maria Bartiromo on Fox News, who basically said there's no evidence that he was brandishing a gun. She said that to Jim Comer, who was the Oversight Committee chairman, who was one of the people who was attempting to spread this lie.
Yeah.
And she did say there's no evidence of that. So I will give credit where credit is due on that. But Kristi Noem is such a fucking Mar-a-Lago face bitch. I'm sorry, but she really is. She's just so grotesque, physically
Did
and
you see?
otherwise. Physically and otherwise, when she calls him a domestic terrorist, an ICU nurse who took care of veterans, and an administration led by a draft dodging fucking pedophile is the one
My God.
who is trying to smear this guy in addition to killing him.
Right.
Not enough,
Guy
not
has like no record, like, and then they're like, well, we were going after someone else. Well, what was he doing that like you're judge and jury in those 20 seconds? And I saw that they took the gun from him before he was shot. So the what's the word I want to use? Um, the amateurness of how the novice of the ICE people, that they react so quickly. Um, he did not brandish a gun on them. One of them took off his gun, took the gun from him, and then they shot him like many times. Like they they don't have the proper training. They're in scenarios that they're not equipped to go in and do. Somebody made a point that they are used to border patrolling. Like, like a lot of the stuff is they're going after, let's say, drug cartels, like on the border. This is a different scenario. They're not, they haven't been trained for enforcement. Do you know what I'm saying?
well, yeah, but
So,
I've
like just realize that as leadership, like Kristi Noem, Donald Trump, at least realize that you need to kind of take a step back and regroup. What you're doing is fucking killing people now.
I think
And it
they
has nothing to do with getting, criminals off the street.
they want it this way. They are not going to step back because they want the chaos, they want the division, they want the violence and brutality that this is all wrought on this country. I will say though, as a next step, and I'm encouraged to see that Chuck Schumer has said that as Democrats, we will not vote for this new Homeland Security package by the 30th. So it's likely that if this holds, it's likely that the government shuts down on Friday. And I
I
think,
heard that.
and
I
it's,
heard that.
and as it
Yeah.
should. And the only way that we come back to the table and negotiate is if there are significant reforms. I think we should abolish ICE. I think we should get rid of it. But that's not going to happen under this administration. But there needs to be accountability. Members of Congress need to be able to go to ICE facilities to
Yeah.
see what's going on, to exercise their constitutional oversight responsibilities. ICE needs to report directly to congressional hearings in public so people know what they're doing and how they're doing it. They need to release video and photo evidence of the conditions that they're keeping these people in, and they need to uh, actually give the public some insight into their operations. When they say, "Oh, we're going after a sex offender," please, I can tell you where a sex offender is 16
Yeah.
Pennsylvania Avenue. That's where he fucking is because he's protecting pedophiles because he's not releasing the Epstein files the way that he
Yes. And
should have.
yeah, that's the
Yeah.
other thing. No Epstein files have been
Yeah.
released.
So fuck that. Tell me where a sex offender is. 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. That's where it is. And they need to basically the Democrats need to hold firm. And I was worried about a lot of the usual Senate suspects in these shutdown scenarios folding. And I'm glad to see that people like Catherine Cortez Masto and Jackie Rosen have all publicly said that they're going to vote no. I'm sure John Fetterman, that oatmeal-brained senator from Pennsylvania, is probably going to vote yes to on this package because he's very
Why
he's
would he vote yes? I mean,
because he's done that all the time, and and because the left has annoyed him, he's decided he wants to be a
but
Republican now.
this is not about a left annoying him. This is about the fact that ICE is out of control and that we need to regroup. And if they're going to get funding for this, they need to have some concessions on how ICE is going to operate with some accountability. And that's not about the left taunting him. So he has to vote for this.
Well,
So
well,
if Pennsylvania people that are listening call him, call him and, and let him know that, he needs to vote no.
he absolutely needs to vote no, and I'm happy to
Apparently
see.
listens to his constituency. That's what he
Yeah.
says.
Well, and the others who I was afraid. I'm talking about mainly the eight who caved the last time: Jackie Rosen, Catherine Cortez Masto, Tim Kaine, uh, Jean Shaheen, uh, Maggie Hassan. They've all said that they would vote no.
Those are different scenarios. Tim Kaine caved because his constituencies work for DC, like a lot of his people, they're federal employees. They weren't getting paychecks. He had some sort of pressure. So this is a different scenario, you know, and yes, his employees will be impacted by this, but what has just gone down, again, three people have been shot, two people have been killed, and it's just going to get worse. And kudos to people in Minneapolis for keeping their cool. Like I was thinking, like if this was in New York, people would be fucking pissed.
Oh
Like
yeah, well we would, that woman in the polka dot dress from October, I think there would be like 1,000 of them.
but not just giving their finger, but
Yeah.
I really think Minnesota's listened to the advice of peacefully protest. Now there was some anger at the beginning, and also kudos to the Police Department who have been working, you know, eh, I feel so bad for them because they're in the middle and they're just, they're hanging on for a thread and not losing their cool.
They're under
Uh,
siege. That city is under siege. They are under occupation by a paramilitary Nazi force. And
yeah.
let's be honest about what that is. It is a Nazi occupation by people who are limp-dicked, fat, dumb, can't get into the actual military or an actual police department. And they are, taking all of their insecurities and past childhood traumas out on the rest of us. Let's be honest about who these men are who are actually the ones doing this.
I
And
think they're January 6th people. I honestly do.
well,
I think they're hardened
one in the
Proud
same,
Boys. Yeah.
low T burger Gestapos. And I think that we have to acknowledge that, men would rather occupy entire cities than go to therapy.
Yes, probably. I mean, who knows? I think they're definitely people from January 6th who were pardoned and who are, doing Donald Trump a favor, or, this is, you know, they're part of his new militia of, of people. And
Well, another
um,
well, another lie I've heard from Republicans is that, well, the local governments they are not coordinating. You want the local government to coordinate kidnapping a 5-year-old? You want the local government to coordinate shooting a woman behind the wheel who's turning in the other direction? You want
they're
to
not giving they're not giving them any information.
Well,
Like,
they're not giving any information after the fact when something terrible has happened. But what they're saying is that they want them to coordinate, like helping, like JD Vance said, oh, well, if there's a sex offender, we want to know where he is. And again, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, that's where he is. In addition
this
to,
isn't about that. This isn't about like not being able to find a sex offender, and that, Minneapolis isn't helping that out. Because even the police chief had said this is not about that, because if that was the case, that's not what they're having an issue with. That's not what they're having an issue with. And apparently there's like an independent force in Minnesota that automatically kind of investigates when things like this happen. They're not even allowed to come in. So they're not getting any information. And so what we know, like, first of all, this man's cell phone, like, who has it, you know?
and what I was hearing, and I don't know if it's true, is that witnesses were being detained about
Yeah, I heard that as well. I
this
can't confirm.
I
Yeah.
don't know if it's true, but I heard that witnesses were being detained, that a witness who managed to get away somehow was worried that they would come back for them. This is a terrorist force. This is a terrorist organization that needs to be abolished. It needs to be dismantled. It needs to be thrown into the ash heap of history with the Gestapo, with the secret police, with all of these other authoritarian paramilitary forces. It is a nightmare. It needs to end. This is an American city that's under siege, under occupation.
As some people are saying, this is like the old Confederacy, like, these boys that are the Night Riders. Um, it's interesting. I sent uh, a contact, an email to Nicole immediately when it happened. Like, we need to hold ICE accountable, and they ask you for your name and address, and I was afraid to give it for a second. Like, they have me on record now that I oppose, you know,
Well,
what's
yeah.
going on.
Well, and to think, and she would absolutely sell
I
anybody
mean,
out.
right. And I did. I mean, but I stopped for a moment. I'm going, do I want to do this? Do I want to give, what I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just simply opposing, my opposition to what happened. And then as her being my congresswoman, I want her to, take action into what happened and hold ICE accountable and become, not that she's going to. But, we had originally had come on air because we wanted to talk about, when she got her, when we talked about how the borders might change for the borders, the district lines might change for her. She posted this thing in the advance about, 1 year in America is winning, and we're just getting started. And she just says this whole thing. 1 year this week, President Donald Trump was sworn in with a Republican trifecta, sorry. And within the first 12 months, we've delivered on multiple promises. So she just goes on about, the border security, lowering gas prices, economic growth, and historic tax cuts. And I'd like to address those things because, you know, bullshit. So first off, the border security has changed, okay? We definitely have closed the border down. But at what price? Two US citizens, many people detained, um, you
Children,
know,
children kidnapped.
yeah, people kidnapped, cities under siege. How about the price tag? Um, we
Well,
can close the border with
yeah.
different methods.
Well, I'll
If we're talking
just
about lowering gas prices, we have by 15 cents. It's not a big difference. Maybe And even not even like sometimes the other deal was like $3. So
Well,
it's not a lot.
I'll just go through what average Americans think about what's happening, because a series of polls have been released in January for the 1 year anniversary that she's commemorating in this op-ed piece. And overall, Donald Trump has a 60% disapproval rating, disapproval by the American public. And let's go issue by issue. And these are a series of polls from Real Clear Politics, from the Silver Bulletin, uh, which is Nate Silver's site, New York Times Siena. And the average polling that he has on the economy, which was a strong issue for Donald Trump in the 2024 campaign, 37% approve of the economy under Donald Trump, 61% disapprove. Uh, Immigration, another strong issue for him in the 2024 campaign. 43% approve, 53% disapprove. So again, it's a 10-point swing in the opposite direction from where he was. Uh, Foreign policy, 36% approve, 57% disapprove. Inflation, cost of living, 36% approve, 61% disapprove. So trade and tariffs, 39% approve, 55% disapprove. And so whatever Nicole is saying about what they've quote unquote accomplished is bullshit, and people see through it clearly according to these polls. And the tax cut that she's touting is the same one that all of her other moderate, so-called moderate counterparts are, which is the salt deduction tax, which is a tax they took away to begin with. And now they're trying to claim credit for bringing back something that already existed.
They
Please.
took away.
Yeah.
It's like, exactly like I've been paying taxes. I never had to pay taxes. I've always got a refund in my my salary bracket. And I used to use that refund to do something on my home. Like one of the beauties of finally being able to own a home is I could use that towards my taxes. And then I used to use it to like, fix something that needs, upgrade or pay off debt. Like that's the other thing. And for the last couple of years, I've had to pay. And so I spend the entire year paying off taxes. So you know, I didn't get a break. And that salt thing that we used to be able to deduct, so thank you for giving it back, but you're not giving us a break. You're just giving us back something we've already had. She talks about um, the fact that seniors can deduct, Social Security, but it's not a significant amount. It's not a significant amount compared to what the wealthy are going to get in the end.
And the
And what
premiums that are going to go up because Obamacare premiums are set to soar by the end of this month. And she's always,
she voted no for that, just
yeah,
for our viewers to know. She did
she,
not vote, though some Republicans did. She was not one of the 17 that
no,
did vote for that. And
no.
people should call her and ask her why. Why did she? Because, she had a very good interview about the district lines being changed with Marsha Kramer. And I was really pissed off at Marsha Kramer because I thought she would have asked it, but she didn't ask her like why she didn't vote for that. It didn't come up, maybe um, but I was thought maybe she would ask her why she didn't vote for it. And I'm sure she had a great stock answer for it. But why didn't she vote for it?
Well, her line is, that Obamacare is unpopular and doesn't work. And the polling, again, doesn't bear that out. In fact, Obamacare is an extremely popular program that, despite Republican efforts to repeal it over 70 times, and despite two or three cases making it before this right-wing Supreme Court, they upheld the program, by the way. Even this court did. And so she's full of shit the way that she normally is. And I think that basically, she's all over TV talking about how this is a threat to democracy, the borders of her district or the lines of her district changing. And she's managed to convince the Daily News because they put out an op-ed saying that the line should remain the same, and so did Tom Robleski, who is basically a MAGA propagandist at this point for the Advance, who he put out that the line should remain the same, not mentioning the fact that it was, Nicole's first vote in Congress was to decertify an election in two states, which would have thrown out the votes of millions of people. And so cry me a river, Nicole, about your fucking district lines. You would have the votes of millions of people in two states would have been thrown out if you had your way. And so screw that, honestly.
Well, it, the whole thing of what she's touting, like the certain things that she has delivered as a congresswoman, um, I'm sorry that as one of her constituents, I just don't see it. When we talk about healthcare, I don't actually like Obamacare very much. I want a single payer system. I didn't think they went far enough.
Same,
But
same.
we don't have any other system. So the only thing that they've produced is a pamphlet from Donald Trump. A pamphlet.
Not
There's
even
no real plan,
concepts of a
you know.
plan. Concepts
Yeah,
of a
so
plan.
that's all they have. So uh, they have nothing constructive. So if you don't like it, then create something, but don't take away what people already have. Now for you and I, our health plans, even though we're fortunate because we work for the city, I'm noticing a change in our health coverage. I'm paying more for certain drugs because we've had to change insurance companies. Um, and so therefore my drug prices are more money. And I don't know once I have to refill a certain prescription if I'm going to be able to afford it. I have two very expensive prescriptions and I don't know if I'll be able to afford them. So where's that, Nicole? Like if I know Donald Trump keeps talking about lowering drug costs, but mine aren't lowered. So I have to be, so where is that? And so she hasn't delivered in what she's talking about. Um, there's a child tax credit. We've always had child tax credit. So it's like, woohoo, all right, but I don't have a child, so I don't get that credit. But I am a homeowner, so where's that credit?
Well, she,
Um,
well, she's propagandizing, and I think the only thing that she knows that she has to offer is that Trump supports her. And that is the only thing. And so she has to sell, the destruction of our institutions, the absolute uh, plunder and looting of our economy by billionaires, and the kleptocracy that this administration has engaged in, the chaos he's sown on the world stage, the violence he's wrought on American cities with ICE and Border Patrol and the National Guard. She has to sell all that as accomplishments because she knows that her fate is directly tethered to him. And I think that we are, as part of our mission, whatever happens with the district lines, I think the district line process will ultimately favor us. But I think we have to show that this agenda, which she has cheerleaded and encouraged and uh, basically propagandized for every chance she get, has been an abject failure on every level.
and she hasn't even addressed, out of I we're there what every Monday,
Mhm.
pretty much Malliotakis Mondays. I have not seen her address us at all. Not even like I'm not talking. I highly doubt she's going to come out of her office if she's there or stop by her office, on a Monday. But she hasn't publicly addressed like I know I have constituents who voice in opposition. Nothing like that. She doesn't address,
Well, she goes
you
to
know,
events. She goes to events and she goes on networks and she goes to places that she knows will fluff up her pillows and that she knows will not give her a real challenge. This is why she hasn't held a town hall. And not just the time she's been in Congress, but the 15 years she's been in elected office. And because she cannot handle anybody who will actually challenge her. She said the other day about the district lines, oh, well, they can't beat me in debate. Well, you haven't shown up for one.
Yeah.
You haven't shown up for any kind of discussion, Nicole. So when it comes to debates, please, debate you where? In our living room while we watch you on Fox News or Newsmax?
Well, I don't watch those channels, so I won't see what she has to say. Though I did see her on Marsha Kramer, and you know, like I said, she wasn't asked the question that I wanted to hear, like why she didn't vote for health care. I know, of course, I know she's not going to be happy with the new district lines because they're going to impact, her being,
Because she's going to lose. Because she's going to lose.
so, but this whole, and I also, when I look at this article sent to the Advance, it's just a cry for, I need to tell everybody how wonderful I am when it's not true,
Well,
when it's not true.
and she's always done this. And unfortunately, I'm calling out the Advance here. The Advance has always given her a platform to do that. And she's always chased headlines in a really sort of craven, opportunist kind of way. And uh, she did not achieve one single thing in 10 years in the New York State Assembly, but yet every time she's wanted a puff piece, the Advance has jumped and given her one. The same thing here. As she's been in Congress, they are willing to do her bidding, to spin her record as something positive, where it's produced nothing. It's produced nothing. In fact, it's produced the opposite. She's enabled the worst imperialist authoritarian administration we've ever had in this country.
Well, she was saying under the previous administration, Americans were paying more for just about everything. That's not true. Has she gone grocery shopping? You know, I went just to go to the local grocery store to get a few things for you know, it was like $85 when it used to be like $45. And why? Because I got some meat. Meat's really expensive. Um, there's a lot of, butter's more exp like the prices, eggs have not gone down in certain places, and so I just find that it's not true. The price of things costs more. Electricity, my utility costs have gone up. My water has gone up. So, what prices is she referring to? Because I now, who being retired, um, I have to work. So I'm semi-retired because I have to work in order to pay off my debt. I've gone into more debt this year than I've ever have before. So, what prices is she talking about?
Well, she
Not
is,
true.
she, like Donald Trump, like the extreme MAGA supporters, the only way that they can win is to create their own alternative versions of reality. And
She
again,
says that we've restarted our nation's economy. No, you haven't. They started a tariff war that has
well,
like
and they
rocked the world.
Well, and they've also, they talk about socialism and this and that. Well, I've never heard of a capitalist free market economy where the CEO of a company like Tim Cook or Jeff Bezos or the guy who runs Netflix, where they go in and give the president a trinket and then he doesn't tariff them. And so the president and the executive branch and the government have their hand in every aspect of the economy that they never had before. Mergers are approved or denied based on whether your outlet is friendly to the president, which is why CBS has basically become state news. And
Yeah.
so that and so if they want to talk about communism and socialism, that's where that is, where the administration basically has its hand in every pot to impact things like mergers or basically what companies get tariffed or not based on whether Tim Cook gives him a trinket. So, or taking 10% of Intel for himself, or using the office of the presidency to enrich himself and his family by the billions
Yeah,
in
the
all
Trump
kinds of,
family has made
yeah,
billions of dollars off of this first year.
all
So
kinds of,
maybe Donald Trump is doing really
yeah.
well. Well, he is doing really well. And his family is, but I'm not. And she talks about hardworking people. I consider myself one of those hardworking people. And I'm surprised that a lot of her fans, you know, who are they blaming? Because they're going through the same thing that we are. Are they still blaming Biden for all this? Yes, they
Yeah,
are.
they are. Well, they'll say that it's the fake news media or whatever. And she is. So again, she just has to, like MAGA, like Trump himself, they create alternative versions of reality when the facts don't line up to whatever their narrative is. And we're seeing that with the Alex Preddy murder. Every angle of that murder shows that their version of events that they are putting out there, he was a domestic terrorist, he was brandishing a gun, he was threatening the agents. That's all bullshit. There's about five or six angles that show that that was not true, but they create this alternate reality and they rely on the tribalism and and frankly the stupidity of their voters. I know we're not supposed to say that, but the people who they really are the hardline, they're just very stupid. They have maybe a third grade reading level.
Well, I
And
don't even know if it's even just that. I just think people are just white supremacists,
well, that
and
too,
it
that
gives
too. I
them
think dumb and
Donald
racist.
Trump gives them the ability to be,
He gives
like,
them
Christian nationalism and white supremacy.
He gives people the permission to be their worst selves, but he also targets people who are pretty stupid. He said himself on many times, smart people don't like me, and that he loves the poorly educated, and because they are ripe for the picking for somebody as predatory and as evil and as authoritarian as he is. And so, and she knows that too. She knows that these people are, Lyndon Johnson said, tell the lowest white man that he's better than the best colored man. He won't notice you're picking his pocket. Give him somebody to look down on and he'll empty his pockets for you. And so she and her movement and Trump and all of the MAGA people with their phony Christianity and their bullshit virtues are know that. They know all
Well,
they have to do is to tailor their alternate reality to the prejudices and the unintelligence and the stupidity of their voters, honestly.
Well, Nicole has made her career out of being a lifelong politician. Like that's what she's done, and this is her job. She's a politician. Don't and To be honest, I don't think we should make that job as cushy as, we should take away their health insurance. Like why is it that, you know, our health care is being jeopardized, but Congress gets a full ride and gets a lovely in policy. Why don't we get that policy? So if I was her, naturally I would want to stay in Congress because look at what they get. Um, I thought public service was you go in, you give a couple of years, and then you go home, you know. But now we've kind of created this monster in Washington where we have lifers, and I attribute that even to people like Chuck Schumer,
Oh yeah.
I love Chuck Schumer. I really think he's there to do good, but I think he needs to retire, and I think
So
there
do
needs to
I.
be some new.
I do too. I think I do too, and I've always had a high regard for Chuck Schumer as well. But I think he's not the leader for this moment. I think he is,
Yeah, I agree.
he is not the leader for this moment. Neither is Hakeem Jeffries. Sorry, Hakeem Jeffries, you are no Tip O'Neill. You are no Nancy Pelosi. You are somebody who is weak and robotic and bought by all kinds of special interests, and they both have to step down. And Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are the leaders of what I like to call the strongly worded letter caucus. They. I saw a really funny meme that said. Archaeologists discover ancestor of Chuck Schumer's strongly worded letter to Genghis Khan.
Well, yeah, yeah, they need to be a little bit definitely stronger, and they're not. And
Well, and listen,
yes, I think they.
When Chuck Schumer said that we're not going to vote for this, I was really happy. But I also there's a skeptical part of me that says, well, is that going to hold till next week, when maybe the outrage of this latest incident has died down, or that maybe that's another thing that we're talking about. And so I'm really wanting to. I want to hope that this holds up, but I don't know because he has shown in the past that he is willing to let a few rogue senators kind of do what they're going to do. And even Hakeem Jeffries, with this latest vote to not fund DHS as long as ICE exists how it has been, uh, he didn't whip the votes to
Yeah,
make sure that those seven representatives did not vote for this. Uh,
absolutely.
and so he should have whipped that shit. You think Nancy Pelosi wouldn't have whipped that?
No,
I think
yeah,
she,
yeah.
or Tip O'Neill or some of the more effective leaders from the past, they would have fucking whipped that shit. And he did not whip those members into line to not vote for that. And I expected Henry Queller to vote for it no matter what, but he should have whipped Tom Suozzi into not voting for that. And Tom Suozzi is a fucking weenie who blames trans people for when he's constipated, pretty much. And so we have to really we need stronger leaders who will
But
whip
people are worried about
the
getting
vote.
reelected, Um, and I blame that on a lot of Democrats who toe the line, and you know who I'm talking about as well on Staten Island. I think that people, they don't go with what they really wanted because they have to appease some conservative base, because they need to stay in government. So let's not make it so cushy to stay there. Um, let's have a term limit in Congress. All right, maybe 2 years is, I agree. Like if you're in there for 2 years, you should be there for a little bit longer, or make it a 2-year term, but you can only serve like,
I think the best way to do what you're talking
maybe
about
10.
is I think the best way to do what you're talking about is campaign finance reforms because all they do for the 2 years, for the most part, is well, now with social media in the mix, a lot of them are social media stars and nothing else. And then they're basically raising money the entire time and they're legislating maybe about 10% of the time. And so I think we have to reform the campaign finance system once we get back into power. We need to, number one, I hope there'll be Supreme Court justice openings where we can actually appoint some justices who will strike down uh, Citizens United. But we also need to make it so that it's not. So we have to make it so that it's not a uh, situation where donors are controlling these people and paying for them to stay there for however long just because it serves their interests.
Right. So, yes, I definitely agree with that. There should be some financing, but I also think there should be some sort of term limits, like we have in city council. You know, I don't know. I think 10 years is good. You come in, you serve 10 years and have a nice day and then go off. But if you're going to make a career out of it, you're going to do things differently because you want to stay there. Or we're going to think about we need to have people there that long because, like someone like Schumer, he's been there a very long time and people begin to think, well, he knows how to run things because he's been there. And he has some sort of, respect, but after a while, it's time to go. 20 years for the Senate. Isn't that like enough? Like a cap? Like
Yeah.
go like 20
Well,
years and thank you very much.
yeah.
Like we have like, or, give them a little retirement package and say, bye-bye, here's a what? No, no. Yeah,
Well, listen, and I would say, that's the issue, but there were people who were there for a very long time that were good leaders and understood the moment. Chuck Schumer just does not understand the moment we're in. He's very much still senator from New York in the year
well, that's where I
1998.
think you should have at least a certain amount of years that you can be there. But I still think there should be some sort of term limits. And then go serve in other capacities, if you really feel that you must. I mean, most of them get cushy lobbyist jobs, So
They
every
do.
they all do. They all get like, so they'll actually will be much better, afterwards probably
Well,
working more.
Nicole Malliotakis, you can go work for Rick Grinnell, go work for John Catsimatidis. Those are your biggest donors. Leave the rest of us with actual representation that's not performative. Because basically all she does is she tries to gaslight and twist reality and warp it to her vision and her narrative. And, chaos in the streets, people getting gunned down, chaos on the world stage, economic plunder by billionaires. And there she is at a parade or a ribbon cutting with her chihuahua. And
Right.
so, and so I,
Amen.
and so
But
I think, it's just really infuriating. You'll notice my tone is a lot more, pissed off than it normally is. I'm usually
well,
pretty level, but
because well, what is she doing for Staten Island? It's all a facade just for Donald Trump, and she's placating to a base of people that are not really what Staten Islanders are about. And a lot of people think we are, but we're not. Given the opportunity, there are a lot of people on this island who do not approve of what she is doing. Um, and I know that we're more conservative than other parts of the city, but there are Republicans on this island that I think do genuine good. Like I always thought Jimmy Otto was a good servant, public servant. Um, like people like him, I would probably like disagree with on some stuff, but I wouldn't be like in front of his office every Monday going, Jesus Christ, Nicole, like do you have a what do you have a human bone? Like,
well,
do you ever think about us?
When Elena was on for you, Elena from the Staten Island Action Coalition, she was my guest co-host, and she said to me, "Well, we try and go after our conscience," and I said, "Well, you can't go after what doesn't exist." You can't go after what
Absolutely.
doesn't exist, and she doesn't have one. She doesn't have any kind of moral code. She
It's
doesn't
like
have
that
any.
file cabinet, it's
Yeah,
empty.
yeah, she has nothing. There's no core there. And I've spoken to her colleagues over the years on both sides of the aisle, and even in her own party, and they all say the same thing, that
Right.
there's just nothing there. And she will be whatever you want her to be. In this case, whatever Donald Trump wants her to be. But once Donald Trump is off the scene one way or another, it'll just be on to whoever she thinks will butter her bread.
Well, so for those who are listening and agree with the fact that Nicole needs to hear from us, please, if write her, go to her website and, send a note, call her office, talk about her opposition and the fact that we need to hold ICE accountable, or if the fact, ask her why she didn't improve the healthcare coverage. Um, you know, we need to flood her office with phone calls. Um, and you can simply, if you need a script, ask us. We can send you a script if you don't know what to say. Um,
Staten Island Action Coalition is also the same group that
I
organizes.
got their script right
Yeah.
here, and it says here, "Hi, my name is blank, and I'm a constituent from, the 11th district." You could say, "I'm calling to make my position very clear. I do not want my representative to support any funding for immigration and customs enforcement. I'm asking my representative to actively oppose ICE funding and to support defunding ICE alongside um, thorough independent investigations info documented human rights abuses and the use of excessive and dangerous force against civilians, including civilians, which includes both non-citizens and U.S. citizens. Continued funding makes Congress complicit in unlawful state violence. Silence is not neutrality, it's approval." And that's, where is her outrage over this? She hasn't said anything. The only thing we got is this advance.
Because she approves and encourages it, and in order to justify it, like I said, you can't go after what exists. So I won't even say on a moral level because she doesn't have any. But I would say that in order to justify it, she cherry picks the worst stories regarding immigrants and paints that as this is what ICE is doing, which she knows is complete bullshit. And
Well,
so.
she's saying that crime is down in the border. Yes, the border look, the border has is a lot better. But it had to get better. It's not like, we wanted to make it worse. I don't know where people think that Biden wanted the border to be the way it was. He approved, a congressional measure that they blocked, and people tend to stop to think that. And I'm also going to say that we've said this many times that we've had an issue with immigration for decades. So this has always been an issue. Um, yes,
At the heart of the issue, as it relates to immigration, is the fact that uh, employers and people who want to exploit immigrants for cheaper labor uh, have wanted to continue the flow of immigrants into this country, and
well, we need
nobody,
them. We
yeah.
we need immigrants in this country. We need people to work certain jobs. We need their employments. So the fact of the matter is that's very true. And there's going to be a backlash in the fact that people aren't coming. Um, and there aren't going to be people available, and people are afraid to even go to work now. You
Well, the
know,
people and tourists don't want to come to this country anymore. They don't, understandably,
they're disgusted.
they
They're
don't want to
disgusted.
be
They don't want to come and support.
and fearful because they don't want to be rounded up by these burger Gestapo goons. In
Tourism is down as someone who's in the business. Tourism is down. And we're in a tourist city. So and that has taken a hit. So it does impact our economy. And um no one, and we say this all the time, no one, when they turn around and it just makes my blood boil that we want open borders. Like they want to fund open borders and they want to protect pedophiles and criminals. I'm like, that is like, what are you like?
well,
Yes, okay.
not
My
only
policy is I want to protect criminals,
well,
you
not
know.
only is that not true about us, but every attack on us is a confession of the and projection of their own issues. Because
Exactly, very much.
you are the ones who are protecting pedophiles. You were mandated by law to release the Epstein files on December 19th. 1% of them have been, and we haven't heard anything since because of the distractions of Venezuela and these ICE murders. You have conveniently buried that and put that off to the side. So that's one. You're protecting pedophiles. And, number two, you are the one who are protecting criminals. You are the ones who are doing all the things that you say that we're doing. Every accusation is projection and confession of their
And they
own
talk
issues.
about weaponizing, and then they talk about the government weaponizing, when in fact it's their government that are doing the weaponizing. The fact that January 6th people who rioted received a full pardon, the fact that this guy Rittenhouse walked around with an AK, on the streets during a protest, and he's a hero,
Well, yeah,
but this
yeah, supposedly, now they want gun control. Now they want gun control because he was carrying around a holstered, unused, legally permitted gun, Alex Preddy. Uh,
And what's funny, they also claim that he had two rounds or two, I don't know, what do you call them that go into the 9 millimeter gun. He had two extra rounds, and they can't prove it. Well,
because it's a lie. It's a
the
lie.
Minneapolis Police Department, they were at the Face the Nation asked them, and they were like, "We don't have that information to even know how true that is. We don't know because they won't let us in on the investigation. So how do we know that's true?"
Well,
And
one thing they can do, the Hennepin County Attorney, Keith Ellison, the Minnesota State Attorney General, what they can do is they can charge that officer with murder and the rest of them with accessories to murder. They don't need any other information. There are a million different angles to show who was culpable and who was at fault. And so what they can do is they can file the appropriate charges. They don't need any new information. There's nothing that they're going to give that's honest anyway. And so use what's ever out there because like I said, I saw at least this is what's different from some of the other issue of the other videos. There was like five or six different angles.
yeah,
And
there was.
it gets worse in every version you see for the federal government. So charge all of those people in the state of Minnesota. They are not going to be pardoned by any presidential action because it's a state crime. Pardon them, charge them all.
Yeah, that's a great idea, And the more and more you look at the videos, people are able to slow and stop the action. You can actually see the ICE agent grabbing his gun and taking it. You could see him taking his gun off of him, and you can also see the officer who's shooting him. And you
Yeah.
see his gun, like I saw the smoke coming out of his gun. Like I was like, wow. Like,
Yeah, eight
so
or
there's
nine
no
times.
confusion on who shot him.
8 or 9 times. And actually, I was meeting up with a friend of ours the other day in Manhattan, and I went in the Union Square area and I happened to stumble upon the ICE protest. This was actually before the murder of Alex
Yeah.
Preddy, and it was a really inspiring thing to see. Union Square Park was covered with people. I think the march had already taken place. By the time I got in there, they had already gathered in the park, and there were speakers and things like that. And actually, the bishop of my church was the Episcopal Church of New York was a featured speaker. It was like a multi-faith kind of thing, and it was really inspiring to see how many people are against this and don't want this to be happening. And uh, and there were signs that said this all over the place, that ICE is Trump's Gestapo, and that's what they are. They are his Gestapo, they are his paramilitary force, they are his secret police.
Yes, they are. And um, look, we need to stop this organization from existing. If they need to do deportations, which people have been doing deportations every presidency, but not this way. Can't be doing it this way. And you can't be going into, cities like they're claiming that Minneapolis isn't doing, it's Minneapolis, the way they govern, that's why these things. No, you're not. You have 3,000 agents in that city. There's like 800 Minneapolis. They're being pulled thin. Why do you need 3,000 agents in a city that doesn't have, you know, the numbers, you're using that as a show of force.
Well, it is,
And even
and actually there are
yeah,
states like Florida. Florida has 1.6 million undocumented immigrants. Texas has 2.1 million undocumented immigrants. You don't see
yeah,
their cities getting rated like this. Minneapolis has maybe 100,000. And so the reason this is not about immigration, this
no.
this raid is because Donald Trump does not like Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota.
And he's
Doesn't
pissed
like
off and he's using it as a Somali.
Yeah, which, they were, and during the campaign, they were eating cats and
Omar.
dogs. They were eating cats and dogs during the campaign. And he doesn't like Jacob Fry, doesn't like Ilhan Omar. This is a city that is led by his political opponents, and he is terrorizing them for it. This has nothing to do with immigration. This,
No, it
this,
doesn't.
this is an authoritarian power grab.
If it does, they would be in Florida or they would be in Texas in
Mhm.
full force. And they're not. They're in Minneapolis and people are down dying. And it's only going to get worse because I'm sorry, but after a while, I think Minneapolis people there, they can only, be peaceful for so long. People riot for a reason. They riot because they've had enough, you know? And I'm really afraid that that's what's going to happen. And because the leadership is they're not de you know defusing it. And even ICE agents, I looked at the way that man pushed that woman. Why? Why did she need to be pushed like that? Like where there's no accountability. And so therefore they have free reign, so they're going to act the way they do. We need to rein it in. We need to hold ICE accountable, get rid of them, make them leave, and rethink your deportation. I just heard on the news Kathy Hochul call for the resignation of of Christine Nome
She
or
did.
the impeachment.
She
So,
she did, and but she's not going to resign because she's too busy fucking her deputy in the offices that she has there,
and
Corey Lewandowski, and so she won't. She's too busy, having sex with him on the private jet that we're all funding. And so I think we have to abolish ICE. That's not going to happen in this funding battle because of the people who are in charge of the executive branch. But we have to say, we have to demand on severe, what I think would make a difference is severe funding cuts and whittling that agency down to the nub that it's supposed to
yeah,
be.
that's a good way to do it. I think it's the only way because Donald Trump is an authoritarian. I mean, it took, like if we look at how Europe dealt with the fact with Greenland, how they kind of banded together and said, no, I'm sorry, this is not acceptable. Um, and I think Congress has to do the same thing in regards to ICE. This is not acceptable. If you're going to deport people, you cannot do it this way.
And she,
Sorry.
and
And not have our funding for it.
No, and the best thing that anybody can do as it relates to a confrontation with Donald Trump is to stand up to him. If you fold the way that law firms did in the beginning of this administration, or that universities did, like Columbia, which was a real pussy move, if you ask me,
Yeah.
then he will just keep coming back for more. He will just keep coming back for more. And the only way to do this is to stand up for him. And I'll tell you, there's one thing that was buried in the headlines yesterday because of this horrible ICE shooting. Uh, Donald Trump, in the beginning of this administration, said that any school district around the country who does DEI risks funding loss, and states challenged that in the courts. And
Hmm.
yesterday, you know what happened? Before it even got to the Supreme Court, it's still in one of the federal courts. They dropped the issue. They dropped the issue entirely because he's when you push back, he tacos.
Yeah.
Trump always chickens out
Well,
when
he's a
you,
bully.
yeah.
So,
So
well, yeah. So, I mean, so we have to push back. We have to stay strong. And so to wrap up what we're talking about, I think we should, say to those who are listening, please call your congressman, your senate, and tell them to, hold the line, to not allow, you, do not fund ICE until they make certain concessions in regards to we are not giving them the funding to continue to behave the way they do. And I think that if Nicole gets enough phone calls, if enough people show up, tomorrow may be difficult because of the weather. So if you can't show up because of the weather, then make a phone call. Make a phone call or send an email, and also send one to Chuck Schumer and Christine Gillibrand. Um, and can we post in our show notes like the phone numbers of
yeah,
Congress,
and you can and
contact information?
yeah, and actually, if you want to go a step further, the family or the community members in Minneapolis, they've also set up a GoFundMe for Alex Preddy's family. And so I'll post the link to that as well.
All right.
They've raised over, the last I checked, they raised over $630,000 for him and for his family. And I would encourage you also to read the statement of the family, which
Yeah,
said,
we posted that,
yeah,
so
which
I
basically
posted on
said
my website.
which basically said the lies that this fascist regime is telling about their son are disgusting, immoral, untrue, and clearly, when confronted with the evidence of our own eyes, doesn't hold up. And so
Right.
we have to uh, do what we can to support the family, the community in Minneapolis. I know that Nancy said earlier that people are only going to be peaceful for so long. Please don't give them what they want. This
No.
this is what they want. They want any kind of
Well, that's what
inkling.
I'm afraid of because
Yeah.
they'll come in and they'll use that as an excuse.
Oh, they'll
And
declare martial law. They will declare martial law. They will assume, they will use it to further their power grab. And we've seen not just violence against people in Minneapolis, but Congressman Maxwell Frost of Florida got assaulted in at the Sundance Film Festival. A Trump supporter walked up to him and punched him in the face.
Really?
Yes, and the person was arrested. He's fine, but he was
Well,
posting about it.
the person is held accountable for
Yeah.
something that he did. I don't condone that. That's ridiculous. Like, as much as I don't want Nicole elected, I don't wish, harm on her at all,
Well, we
in
spoke
essence
out.
of that.
We spoke out when Charlie Kirk was murdered, and
Yeah.
we said it was we didn't condone that. We were not okay with that.
I'll stand across the street from her office and, talk about like what she's not doing for Staten Island and that she should not be reelected. That's how we operate in this country, and that's how we should continue to operate. And, people go to training on how to deal with the ICE situation. You have a right to film what is going on. You don't have a right to impede in what they're doing.
Don't
And
engage
but
them. Don't engage them.
don't engage them at all. And this man wasn't even engaging, like he was, excuse me, he was far back from them. They approached him. They approached him. They pushed a woman next to him, and then he went to help that woman, and now he's dead. So um, we this is unacceptable, and so as we're sitting here, you know, as snow allows people to kind of sit back, reflect, uh, relax because you have no other choice. Think about that. We have a wonderful country, and we need to stand up for that country.
We need to fight for it. And if and if there are Wicked fans listening, listen to "There's No Place Like Home" from the Wicked soundtrack. That's been my resistance anthem lately. So on that note, we'll let everybody go back to their,
Shovels. And
Netflix and shovels and, endless food, which I'm sure I'll be engaging in at some point.
I have enough Chinese food for 3 days,
Yeah.
so
On
go
that
ahead.
note, this is a special weekend edition of the Left in the Forgotten Borough podcast. I'm Andrew Savage.
And I'm Nancy Richards, and enjoy your snow day on Monday.